Fantasy drafts are flying fast and furious, and that's why you're tapped right back into your daily source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Tuesday edition, and we're not only talking about Jeremy Swayman, but breaking down our studs, slips, and steals from our first Listener League draft. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir, hockey fans. The fantasy game is on and popping. Drafts going left and right. And right now you're zeroed in on your daily source for fantasy hockey news. And very soon, Steele, daily betting breakdowns. It is the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Salute, thank you, and much love for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Steele, you and I always say this off air. We try and keep it 30 minutes, short and sweet, keep it tight. We'll do our best today. I'm excited to talk about, you and I haven't really spoken about our first draft, how we're feeling about our teams. I'm really liking yours. We'll talk about some of our concerns, some of our favorite picks, how our teams are looking like, but we got to talk about this Jeremy Swayman situation, and I'll turn it right over to you because to me, I got some takes on Mr. Cam Neely's comments. However, just looking at our Listener League, which I just pulled up, Jeremy Swayman was taken 13th in the second round, Steele. He was a very high draft pick. So we'll talk about that after, but over to you. Jeremy Swayman, not on the ice for the Boston Bruins. They're going to be going with Korpisalo. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I was flabbergasted by the comments of the front office and Cam Neely, the president of the Bruins. I mean, we've never seen the Bruins front office be this upfront about a contract negotiation with one of their players. A lot of it is behind the scenes. They get it done. They have tremendous contracts in the past. They've been known to have some of the best contracts in the National Hockey League. David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, all those type of guys that we grew up watching over our time. And this is, to me, is really insane. Again, I've never seen the front office of the Bruins be so upfront about the negotiation and see the emotion on Cam Neely's face. I mean, the comment in itself, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll get it on the screen. But Cam Neely on Jeremy Swayman saying, I would have 64 million reasons why I'd be playing right now. And I mean, the elusive, alluding to the fact that they've offered him an 8x8 contract for 64 million, overall. It's astronomical in my opinion. So there's a lot going on with this situation. If that's to be true, that he was offered an 8x8, 8 year by $8 million contract, I mean, that would make him, I believe the fifth highest goalie being paid in the National Hockey League if he were to accept that. And for a guy who has never had the brunt of the workload, who hasn't really had that type of, he's been great in his NHL career, but he's had a relationship with his, with his partner in the crease. He hasn't had the brunt of that workload. Like I said, it's a tough situation. So I see it from both sides, but it's very, very funny to see the emotions on the front office right now. And the negotiations still going through with Jeremy Swayman and his camp.
What's really interesting is the Boston front office, for the first time perhaps that I can remember in recent memory, looking like they're not really handling this process, how they have been so neat and tidy operating in that front office deal, perennially making noise in the playoffs not too long ago. What was it, 2013 or 14, a Stanley Cup? So this is a bunch of executives that don't usually fumble the bag, and it seems like that's what's happening right now. And look, we aren't in these negotiations. I don't know what Jeremy Swayman is thinking or feeling. However, in terms of a fantasy hockey piece, that's what I'm looking at. And right now, Steele, Korpisalo, obviously now you got to consider taking a look at him. And I don't mean drafting maybe, but maybe you do at the very back end of your draft. Who knows when Swayman comes back? You got to believe that it's probably sooner than later. So maybe you just draft Swayman and you look at Korpisalo on your early waiver wire targets. We'll talk about that on every single Monday episode from now until basically May. However, last year, Steele, 916 save percentage for Swayman, 2.53 goals against. He stymied the Maple Leafs for most of the first round, one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. He has what it takes to be a number one goaltender. He has what it takes to be a top fantasy option. I just don't think that this is nearing its conclusion anytime soon. I hope it's sooner than later. I don't know what your take is on that, but I'll leave it at this and over to you again, and we'll talk about our draft, favorite players, steals, slips, all of that after the break. This isn't good for the Boston Bruins, and I know that's a very obvious take, but maybe, Steele, now this downfall that we've been kind of waiting and predicting, if Korpisalo's got to be the guy for even a few weeks, I'm not saying the season's done. I'm just saying I got some serious concerns about this club.
Yeah, it's definitely a major concern because the way Jonas Korpisalo played last year, obviously, again, it's a different team in front of him, but this guy could not stop a beach ball. I mean, if this guy fell out of a boat, he wouldn't hit water. It's that type of situation with Korpisalo, and there's not a lot of confidence with this guy. You know, again, the one preseason game he did play well, but you know, to have that on a consistent basis, it's going to be scary for the Boston Bruins. So, you know, we're going to get into Jeremy Swayman, where he was drafted in our league, maybe a little bit too high and early on in the draft. But look, we've seen players hold out. I can't remember a time where a goaltender held out for very long. But Jeremy Swayman was a goaltender going into the season after, you know, the Linus Ullmark trade to Ottawa. He was going to get the brunt of the workload. Like I said, this is a goaltender who was going to easily see up to potentially 60 games played this upcoming season. You know, it's putting him in the likes of UC Saros, Alexander Gorgiev, Connor Hellebuck, Stuart Skinner, guys who get over 58 games played. Jeremy Swayman hasn't played more than 44, which was a career high last season. So he was going to get a lot of work done this upcoming year. And, you know, we were going to see what he's made of. Is he able to hold that? Is he going to be able to hold that pressure on his shoulders, have that consistency game in and game out? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be fun to see what happens with the Boston Bruins to start the season. And if they can rely on Jonas Korpisalo, because if Korpisalo comes in and he plays some phenomenal hockey, that's not going to do a lot for Jeremy Swayman's case about signing this long-term contract and going forward with the Bruins. So, look, we're excited to see what happens, but this might put a dent in Jeremy Swayman's value moving forward. That's why he was on the high risk, high reward category on that episode.
This is also a team in the Boston Bruins that is right there in the middle of the pack offensively. I think they were 12th or 13th in goals for last year. Same for the power play. Looking at it here, 14th in the NHL last year, clicking at 22.2%. So it's not exactly like he's going to have a ton of wiggle room, whoever's in that blue pink. So that's another angle we need to consider here. And I think when we talk about how high Jeremy Swayman was drafted, Steele, in my opinion, there is absolutely no way that goaltender should have been taken in the second round. That's just my take. We'll talk about that after the break. I'm not trying to say the Boston Bruins won't make the playoffs. I'm not even going to go there. It's far, far too early. But what I will stand by, this saga drags on anymore, Steele. This is a team not very deep up the middle. This is a team that has a lot of faith riding in Swayman, their big boy up front in Pasternak. And if even one of those things goes off the rails, I just don't think there's enough depth there to pick up every kind of angle of slack that will need to be covered, including the rest of today's Fire episode. Right after the break, today's episode is brought to you our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page you're placing your bets. Get started right now with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager. That's at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please go enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Flip and I just concluded our first listener league draft last night or 2 nights ago. The casual league has been completed. We do have the competitive league later tonight, Tuesday. So we'll get to that later this week as well. But we're gonna break down our fantasy draft, our teams individually, as well as our favorite picks, worst picks, sleeper picks, steals, everything you need to know. We're going to start with our own team. So, Flip, I'm going to throw it over to you, my friend, while I get this set up. And for us, everybody watching on YouTube, you can see everything going on with our draft.
I like that. And if you are on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. The feedback, 5-star reviews, written comments, written reviews. Not only does it help us and the pod, it really does give us the tools to feed you guys with the fantasy fire that you need. So that's what I think doing this deal. It's not only going to help me realize, look, this is not an exact science. So while I'm putting out disclaimers and caveats and trying to cop out, because I'm trying to say is I really like your team and I think mine might be in a little bit of trouble. However, Brady Tkachuk I got in the first round. Evan Bouchard, Vincent Trocheck, Ilya Sorokin. Look, Steele, goalie started to fly. I could have waited. I pulled the trigger a little early on Sorokin, but I have been burned far too many times in the past by goaltending. You know this. I'm not going 0G with that one. Miro Heiskanen at 5. Matt Boldy at 6. Tuck in the 7th round. Then Philip Gustafson. Thomas Harley. Macklin Celebrini, which I want to talk about. Blake Coleman. Don't know how I feel about that one. Want to talk about that as well. Tara Vinen, Keandre Miller, Neil Pionk. And then I had to stick on brand Steele with my last few picks. Jonathan Huberdeau on a high risk, high reward. Pavel Mintyukov, a very intriguing D-man for the Ducks. Sean Monahan, and I rounded it out more on brand than I could possibly do with Cole Perfetti in the 18th round.
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 picks I absolutely love. I was very disappointed. I was upset with you when you drafted Evan Bouchard because that was going to be my 2nd round draft pick. You were drafting, or I was drafting right in front of you. I had the 9th pick. You had the 10th pick.
Yeah,
and then
tee this league up if you don't mind. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, 16-team league, positional draft, 2 centers, 2 left, 2 right wings, 4 defensemen, 2 utility spots, 2 goaltender spots, but 3 goaltenders maximum, and 4 bench spots. But it was a snake draft. I was the 9th pick. You were the 10th pick. So coming back in the 2nd round, you were drafting ahead of me. That's exactly what happened last year as well, I believe. And we snuck a couple of picks in there, a couple of steals, and Evan Bouchard in the 2nd round was a steal for you. So I really like your first 3 picks here. I talk very highly about Brady Tkachuk, especially in categorical leagues. He brings out the peripherals and the shots, the hits, the penalty minutes, banger league beauty, obviously one of the top guys out there. So I love him in the 1st round. I love Evan Bouchard in the 2nd, and I love Vincent Trocheck in the 3rd. He's one of those guys, like we said, a guy who, like Joel Eriksson, Zach Hyman, who does all the dirty things, who does everything well. He fills out all those categories you're looking at. Obviously not a top tier player, but he does everything you need, especially in this format, which we do. Ilya Sorokin is definitely where I want to start. I think obviously didn't implement the 0G strategy. I think you could have waited a little bit on Ilya Sorokin, but like you said, goaltenders were getting taken very, very early. Connor Hellebuck, Jeremy Swayman in the 2nd round. Yeah. Andre Vasilevsky, Jake Ottinger, Sergei Bobrovsky going in the 3rd round. So top tier goaltenders were going pretty quickly. So I'm not mad that Ilya Sorokin was taken in the 4th, but I think you might have been able to wait on him, especially with maybe people looking at him coming off the back surgery, the regression of a season last year. Obviously, as we're very high on Sorokin. I'm very high on the New York Islanders, so I'm fine with the pick. I think you could have waited. You know how I feel about Miro Heiskanen. I love him when we're talking about the NHL sense of things with Dallas Stars. When it comes to fantasy hockey, I do think he gets he's overrated a little bit in that sense, and he gets picked a little bit too early. So in the 5th round, just for me,
75th overall feels okay though. But I hear you.
I think for me personally, I would have waited till at least the 7th or 6th. I love Matt Boldy in the 6th round right here. Yeah, dual eligibility with this guy. And then for me, again, Philip Gustafson, I was very surprised that you drafted this goaltender when just after I had the next pick and I drafted your boy Kochetkov. So I'm surprised you went with the Philip Gustafson route. But overall, I am a big fan of your team. Again, besides the Miro Heiskanen pick, you stuck with your guns. You went with Heiskanen. You went with Thomas Harley. You love the Dallas Stars
I had
players
to.
here.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really like your team. I actually like Blake Coleman in the 11th round, a guy who has the dual eligibility. He can bring out the peripheral category, shots, hits, penalty minutes when you need him to.
Okay.
Like you said, the Calgary Flames aren't going to be as bad as a lot of us think. So my overall consensus, I like your team. Just however, I would have waited on a few picks, but overall, good roster.
I appreciate that. I think if I just have to highlight my favorite pick, and they're on the same team, I actually think Philip Gustafsson, considering how good we think he is and how he kind of underperformed last year, the reason why I went with him over Kochetkov is very simple. Freddie still has a large claim to that cage. And it is Kochetkov's future, most definitely. And does he have the more upside? If this was a keeper league, I would have gone with him for sure. Philip Gustafsson is the guy. And I know Marc-Andre Fleury can still eat minutes if something goes wrong, but that is his number one spot. So just in terms of the share a little bit, that's what I was reading into. And my favorite, my quote-unquote steal, my favorite pick of my team, Mr. Roden, in the 6th round, I think is Matt Boldy. At 87th overall with the dual eligibility, I think Matt Boldy's got breakout written all over him. And I have a second one, and then I want to turn it over to you. I want to break down your team, take a look at it in depth. It's Teravainen in the 12th round. He's also dual eligibility. And if we think, and this is where we'll give you kudos in a hot minute, Connor Bedard is going to be as good as he is going to be, which I think that's a pretty safe prediction, and Teravainen's his wingman dishing it around, my guy's going to get 50 or 60 apples just alone power play time. It was a sneaky pick in the 12th round, but it's mostly because of your choice of Connor Bedard. Let's turn it over to you and your team because, Steele, if I'm being honest, I would have to give the edge if I were picking a team to do better this season. I'm going to give you the edge, but I'll talk to you about why it might not happen in a few minutes.
I do just want to quickly wrap up on the goaltenders. We'll wrap up with your team, and then we'll come back and talk about my team after the break. I do want to say, again, I was surprised about the Philip Gustafsson thing. One, like you said, Marc-Andre Fleury can eat into his starts, as well as Jesper Wallstedt could come in potentially and get some starts as well, depending on how things go. Frederick, and this is the reason why I was surprised you didn't take Kochetkov, because I know you're high on him. But also, again, like, it is Frederik Andersen. He should be the starter, but 16 games played last year, 34 games played the year before that. He hasn't been exactly the healthiest goaltender on a year-to-year basis. And Kochetkov, like you said, he's coming in. He should be the future of this organization. So that's my take on the overall goaltenders right there. I do really like the Teuvo Teravainen. But yeah, my favorite picks by far, definitely the Evan Bouchard in the 2nd round, and then also the Matt Boldy pick in the 6th round for sure. Those are my favorite picks for your team as well. And then obviously you got to go with your boy Cole Perfetti to wrap things up there in the last round. So
why not?
He could be a sneaky pick. He could definitely be a sneaky pick for this Winnipeg Jets team if he remains in that top 6 forward group. We are going to come back after the break and break down my casual listener league team as well. Sir. The sleepers, our favorite picks, worst picks. Where did I go wrong? Flip will let me know everything that I did wrong in the upcoming segment. But first, this episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when buying your tickets to the next big event. That's why we use the Game Time app. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, and comedy theater events near you. Game Time, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Hey, we got some special guests on this episode. Yeah. If you look over here as well,
This cat's wild.
Hey,
Oh,
Loki's just taking a nap right
yeah.
there at the end of the
It's
bed.
Animal,
So
Animal Kingdom.
it's
This cat's wild.
Animal Kingdom featured with our pets. Absolutely love them. But let's get down to the nitty gritty here. Back to the draft recap, breaking down everything from our fantasy leagues and our fantasy draft. Let me just pull up my team right over here.
Let's have a look at
Here
your
we
team,
are.
Mr. Roden.
Let's have a look-see, shall we?
We shall.
You know, I'm over here on the right side. If you're watching on YouTube, the Locomotive 2.0 after my beautiful dog back there. But yeah, you know, I was the 9th overall pick. I had the 9th pick in the draft. So breaking down my team right here, JT Miller in the first round, Zach Hyman, Connor Bedard, Alex Ovechkin, Moritz Seider, Alex DeBrincat, Brandon Montour, Pyotr Kochetkov, Martin Necas, Matvey Michkov, Cam Talbot, Victor Arvidsson, Darnell Nurse, Anthony Stolarz, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Taylor Hall, Jake McCabe, and Warren Fogle to wrap things up. I'll throw it over to you. I'll let you start. Break it down the way you like, what your favorite picks, maybe where I went wrong. What are you liking? Maybe a sneaky pick that I had, but I'll let you take the reins here.
I appreciate that. First and foremost, I really love that you also stuck to your guns at a couple of points here. And not to get put the horse ahead of the wagon or wagon ahead of the whatever. Matvey Michkov, first of all, sneaky. And I love it. And when you're looking at what this kid has done in the preseason, Steele, and again, it's just the preseason, but I love this as your utility kid who could explode. My number one critique, because this is where I wanted to start, but I just saw Michkov and I got excited. So I think my concern with your team, obviously, the first one would be if Kochetkov doesn't eat the minutes that we both think he could probably get there, and Talbot struggles and they go to Husso or they go to someone else, you're going to have to get very, very creative. I like that you got Stolarz there, though, as a little bit of security blanket, because if it goes that way for Toronto, at least you're covered there. So I would say my one concern, and probably the top quote-unquote way you went awry, would be waiting a little bit too much. However, I went a little too early. Maybe you waited a bit too much. Hey, it's not an exact science. And number two, I would just be a little bit worried about your scoring punch from your D-men. Otherwise, I don't think I can nitpick your forward group because it's better than mine, more balanced, and has a little bit more potent punch. Connor Bedard, love. Miller, love. Hyman, slight regression. He plays on the Oilers. Gonna be fine. DeBrincat, Necas, nasty. My second concern, I'll spit it out and turn it over to you, would be scoring punch, offensive firepower, Montour, Seider, Nurse, McCabe. Not their go-to, not their bread and butter. Seider could do it, sure. Darnell Nurse could chip in, sure. Brandon Montour's done it in the past. It's not a big track record. Those are my two gripes, Steele. Otherwise, I really like your forward group. I would say you absolutely nailed those draft picks.
Yeah, I was very happy with this draft, and I do agree with you. Maybe definitely the worst part of my team right now is the goaltender, or the three goaltenders I have. Again, I went down the thought process of, look, Frederik Andersen has dealt with injuries numerous times over the last couple of years. Kochetkov can come in and take the reins there. I went with him. I did want to wait a little bit longer. I tried to implement the 0G strategy as long as possible, but like you said, goaltenders were flying off the rack. They're flying off the shelf. Really I had to get in there in the 8th round, so I went with Kochetkov as the number one guy. Again, I'm going to go back and defend Cam Talbot here, and I'm going to pull up his stats real quick.
Yeah,
I think Cam Talbot is an unreal goaltender who gets overlooked countless times. I mean, the career that he's had, a career 913 save percentage, a 2.63 goals against average. I mean, the short stint in Ottawa where he had a below 900 save percentage, but was still 17, 14, and 2. I mean, Cam Talbot to me doesn't get enough credit for what he brings to the table. So I think I'm completely fine with the Cam Talbot. And then I wanted that security blanket, like you said, of Anthony Stolarz as that third string goaltender who potentially can come in and get the starting role if things go sour and south with Joseph Woll. So
and they could.
I do agree with you. And they could. So I do agree with you. Definitely the lower end of my team is the goaltenders, but I still like coming out with those three guys. As for the defensemen, definitely a lack of power punch offensively with goals and assists, like Moritz Seider, Brandon Montour, perennial 40 to 50 point guys. Maybe Sider can get up to 60 potentially this upcoming year. Darnell Nurse, you're not going to get more than 35 for what the type of game that he brings as well. Jake McCabe on the back end, really just looking for the blocks from that guy. But that's what I was going with my defensive group there. That was my thought process as well, is filling out those peripherals, because Sider, Darnell Nurse, and Brandon Montour, they're going to get the blocks. They're going to get the hits. They're going to get the shots on net. They're going to get those peripheral stats for me. So I went heavy with the offensive group, and I'm very happy with those guys that I got. I mean, to me, my favorite pick of all, I can't believe Alex Ovechkin fell down all the way to the 4th round, 56th overall. I was ecstatic that I could get Ovi there, because I'm high on him again. I think it's going to be a bounce back season in the goal department, but the new looking team of Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Mangiapane, Jacob Chikrin, I like that as well. So he's also a guy who's going to fill out the peripherals, shots on net, hits, potential penalty minutes as well. So my favorite pick by far is Alex Ovechkin in the 4th. And then, like you said, Matvei Michkov, I wanted to wait maybe another round on this player, but I couldn't let him slip in another draft, because he was stolen from me in a different draft outside of this with my boys back from Stouffville. So I couldn't. I had to pull the trigger on Michkov in the 10th round, but I'm very happy that I got him there as well.
Shout out to Stouffville one time. Also, shout out to Newmarket one time. Ray Twinney, you know what it is. But also, Steele, it's very intriguing here that you mention Michkov, and then you also mention all of your peripheral coverage on the back end. So maybe that's the kind of balance that you need to have on a team, because if there's one thing to be true about your blue line, your blocks, hits, and penalty minute coverage is probably going to be just fine. Power play points, shots, points, assists, those kinds of things, maybe not so much. And I just wanted to kind of, not to be selfish, but to bring it back to my team, a player that I forgot to talk about, Steele. I mentioned Matt Boldy as my overall, I think, favorite pick in terms of like value. I got him in the round and what I'm invested him and what he could do. I think my sneakiest pick, and another player that I've spoken, probably it was like the most I've spoken about any player when we first started this pod, it's Alex Tuck at 10th overall in the 7th round. And this is a Buffalo team that's going to be better this year. They are only 2 years removed from a bunch of beast mode fantasy seasons from Tuck, Thompson, and, Peterka on the rise now, but also Dylan Cousins. If we're buying into the bounce back, getting Alex Tuck in the late 7th round, almost the 8th round, when we know he can touch 70, 75 points and he's going to play with a really good top 6 in Buffalo, look, that's one of those other ones that I was very happy to get him 10th overall. Hey, we stuck to our guns, baby. We're going to stay on brand with these players. Sink or swim. That's what it is. We'll break down, though, tonight's draft. Holy, I'm struggling with these days, pal. Maybe you could have a little bit more sleeps, less beers. Anyway, over to you. Take us away. That was a good draft. I'm excited for both of our squads and tonight's draft.
Real quick, I do just want to wrap up with this point. This could be a sneaky player. Maybe I'm just... maybe I need some more sleep as well, and I'm not thinking straight here. But my last pick in the draft was Warren Fogle. This guy's got dual eligibility. He had a career year last year, 41 points, 82 games, 20 goals, and he did all of that in under 14 minutes of average ice time. He's now going to an LA Kings team. He's going to an LA Kings team where he's going to be playing in the top 6 group as well. He's going to be playing on the second power play unit. So that could definitely be a sneaky ad. Obviously, if you don't draft him, completely fine. Maybe just keep your eyes on him. Keep him on your radar. But the dual eligibility, getting that top six in the Kings organization, as well as he did that he had a career year with under 14 minutes of average ice time. So I just wanted to mention Fogle as one of those guys. Again, another St. Andrews College alumni as well. Got to give a shout out to the Sac High School out there. Everybody, Robert Thomas as well. St. Andrews College as well. They produce some good hockey players out here.
It's a big episode for the Northern GTA. Let's get it.
Yes, it is. Northern GTA. Let's go. Thank you so much, though, for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Like I said before, for your second listen, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day from both Flip and I. We wish you good luck with your drafts this week. We wish you good luck with all your bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.